The Irish Song and Recitation Festival, home of song, story, and poetical proverb. You are at the Irish Roots Cafe, and I am Mick the Bridge, your host. This is one of 3 broadcast series here at the cafe. The other 2 cover Irish family history worldwide and the history of the Irish in America. Óráid a bhathawáile. So step right up to the microphone, folks. Consider calling in at 816-256-3360. Then you just speak, sing, or play your piece proudly into my phone recorder. If it fits, we will place it on the air in a future show. But remember, it's all for free and it's all for fun, and tens of thousands of our listeners are looking forward to each show. And why is that? Because every day's a holiday at the Irish Roots Cafe. Reach me anytime, and be sure to read my show notes for this episode on my webpage at www.irishroots.com. Now let's move into the big back room here at the cafe and have a listen to what's being served up today. Welcome to show number 21 of the Irish Song, Dance, and Recitation Festival at the Irish Roots Cafe. Today we have special guest Adam Braunschweig with us today, talking about Irish pubs, Irish pipes, the study of Irish music, ethnomusicology, and the song for today is going to be By the Banks of the Roses, and that's going to be a real treat. So let's sit down with Adam right now and listen in. Adam, how are you?
Good, Mike. How are you today?
Hey, I'm doing real good. Why don't you tell the folks a little bit about your background, where you spent time in America, and I also understand you spent quite a bit of time in Ireland. Why don't you give us a little history of your background here?
Okay, well, once again, my name is Adam Braunschweig. I grew up in Holyoke, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston and Springfield. And my father was born in Germany. He came over in 1954, and from there I grew up in Massachusetts and just really had a connection to the Irish community there. Started playing Irish music about 99, I think.
Right, well, what kind of instruments did you play?
Well, I started off playing guitar, and then I moved to the mandolin and tenor banjo, and from there I went to Ireland and got a master's degree in ethnomusicology from the University of Limerick. And while I was there, I also started playing the Uilleann pipes, taking lessons from Mikey Smith, a young Uilleann piper from Dublin.
Boy, what a background. Now, the Uilleann pipes are a pretty hard instrument to learn. I looked at the regular pipes for a while, but boy, when it came to the Uilleann, I just didn't have time.
Yeah, it's a big learning curve in the beginning there, just getting the pressure right and constant. And from there, it's like an ordinary instrument, really.
Well, now, have you spent much time playing music in pubs?
Yeah, I did. That's mainly where the sessions are. And when I was thinking about what to do for a master's thesis, I was thinking, well, how do I have this connection to Irish music in Massachusetts, being mostly from a German family? And I was thinking about it for a while, and I was thinking, well, it probably has to do something with the pubs that are all around, almost every pub that I would go into would be Irish themed. And so I started thinking about that and just kind of relating it to the music. And what I was working on was that I think the pubs in America, the Irish themed pubs in America, which also, they sell pub kits that they bring over from Ireland, some artifacts and things like that, and then they set them up, wherever you want. But they offer a place that people, Americans, can come in and feel like they're escaping their everyday situation, coming into this Irish environment, and that kind of gives the music a context. And
well, that's right, and of course you've seen a lot of that in Boston then.
Yeah.
And I know in Kansas City we've got, let me see, one pub, there's a session in every Saturday, and then Daddy Delahunt's place, they have a session there on every other Saturdays, I think. And so it's alive here in Kansas City too, but sure not on the scale that it would be in Boston.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there definitely are more pubs in Boston and perhaps in New York too. There are a fair share here, and the guy who owns the place down here, Raglan Road, I think he's from Dublin, and he does a pretty good job on the bringing Irish musicians in and setting the scene for it. So there's quite a strong Irish pub community, I would say.
Hey, that's right. And boy, I've noticed I talked to some friends over there they're over in England now, and they said even the Irish pubs over there are turning into like a franchise operation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not quite the same feel. It's much more modern in a lot of instances. Now, what do you know about the development of the pub?
Well, I was studying it from more of an American point, but when I did come across some interesting facts is that when I think of the session, I think a lot of people think it's been around for, hundreds of years, but when it comes down to is it started in England when these musicians were emigrating and working on various reconstruction projects after World War II, that they couldn't play in their tenements or where they were living in England, so they would go to the local pub, get all together, and then eventually, as they were coming together, they said, well, to the proprietor, can we have a session here? The music wasn't really allowed in the pubs early on, either were women. So,
well, what can you give us a time frame there? What dates roughly are we talking about?
right around the late 40s. So in the 40s to the 50s in England. So that's what would be when the sessions originated, somewhere around that time.
Right.
So from there, they brought the sessions back to to Ireland, and the same thing was happening in the States, where these immigrants were coming to a foreign land, being really lonely. They needed somewhere to get together and experience some of their own culture. So I think that's pretty much would be the origin of an Irish pub in the States, is what these Irish people needed somewhere to go and feel at home and live their culture in another land.
Well, how has it changed since, say the 40s there, or whereabouts where you're talking, to where it is now? Do you see a development?
Yeah, lately it seems like it's much more of a commercial. They've been able to capitalize on this notion of Irishness, and it's very accessible to everyone because it's kind of an underdog culture, and it doesn't really have, you don't have a past where you're shying away from, really. It's very accessible, and I think that concept of an Irishness that can be shared with everyone is very accessible, and the way that people really get into that, I think, firsthand is when they go into an Irish pub or an Irish restaurant, and they have the Irish drink and the food. Not that there really isn't Irish food necessarily, but
or at least there wasn't.
Yeah, that's true.
What about the difference between you might hear in those pubs some traditional Irish music with what we call a session, where musicians just drop in and start playing together, and then there's the Irish American music that goes back to the 1800s. What's the difference, and how might you hear either one of them in a pub?
That's a good question. Most of the pubs that I've been in usually have a session. If it's not every week, it might be every other week or so, and that would be the traditional session environment where fiddles, flutes, instrumental music, perhaps a few songs. They might be unaccompanied songs, so a cappella. But what I think is key about Irish pubs in America is that they're not just Irish pubs. They're not just Ireland all the time. Usually, what they have is they try to incorporate the local community. So they're Irish themed, but they're also making a connection to the Americanness of a certain community. So what Mick Maloney, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, but he teaches at NYU, a great banjo player.
Well, yeah, didn't he do that Far from the Shamrock Shore? Did a study of early Irish American music, and of course quite a bit more.
He did. He does a lot of. He just did McNally's Row of Flats, I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's all of the old. His specialty is those Irish Americans songs from the 1920s and earlier. And but what he had to say about the session is that the session environment is, if you can bring in a song from, say, America or your own homeland, as long as you put it into the constraints of the session, whereas say it's going to have fiddle, it's going to have flute, it'll have an Irish style guitar accompaniment or something, then that's accepted. And so it could be an American song, but once you bring it into an Irish session in an Irish pub, then it becomes kind of sort of this local repertoire.
It'll be a certain style. Now, what in the world would an Irish guitar sound be?
Well, guitar hasn't been in Irish music for that long, but I had a teacher once that said, well, you can do whatever you want, because it hasn't really, there's no preconditions really. But lately it's been an open-tuned guitar, maybe to dadgad, or these are guitar tunings. Dadgad refers to the strings. Each string would be D-A-D, G-A-D, and these have kind of an open drone sound. So maybe it goes back to the Irish pipes, where there's a drone, and you don't want to have too many notes that hold you into one key or so. But so that would be an Irish guitar sound. It kind of sounds like a bouzouki, open-tuned bouzouki. Yeah, I don't know if you need any.
Yeah, is that now a lot of people say Irish guitars, they play real fast. Is that true?
No, it's really not about. It's not really about the playing fast. Really, Irish music at all isn't really about the speed. It's about the rhythm and the timing. So it's dance music, and you can dance at any speed, really. So there were a few pubs in Ireland that still had a very country, rural aspect to them. So I managed to get into a few that were, still family run. The whole family might be there on a Sunday or a slow day, or even helping out. But or like in Dingle, perhaps there was a pub that was still kept part of the old shoe, a pub attached to it. So it was kind of unique. You turn around and there'd be shelves full of old shoes and things that used to happen, or a general store kind of aspect to them. But for the most part, most of the pubs in Ireland in the cities have taken on this kind of Irish super pub.
Like a franchise type thing. And it's the same thing, I think, in England. My friends have been telling me that the old corner pub where just the folks got together is different now. It's like a franchise, just like anywhere else in the developed world, where it's lost some of its local flavor.
Yeah, but
it's popular among the people, and that's really what's happened in America too, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's gone back to Ireland too. I mean, one of my professors was working on a project in Chicago. I think it was Chief O'Neill's, is one of the big famous pubs out there, and the owner has shipped everything from Ireland over there to create this experience where once you walk in the door, you're kind of back in the 1700s in Ireland. So
right.
And it doesn't, to me, it doesn't really matter if that exists or not, whether, in Ireland or in the United States, because you're kind of just stepping in. You want to escape from your everyday reality and kind of come into this environment where, the bustle and the noise of the city aren't there, and you're coming in to, and the music plays a big part of that, because the music is a living, breathing part of that. The musicians there are creating tunes that, they might be as old. They're a living artifact of that time period. So.
That's right. So you really are stepping back in time. The accoutrements might be a little different, but it really is different. And talk about going back in time. I was looking at the boron, which everybody needs an extra boron player. I know they're cheaper by the dozen. I've been playing it a little bit. I was looking up the history, and they were saying that the boron really, in the modern incantation of things, really didn't come about until 1910, 1914. Mm-hmm. Even though there was something they called a tympan that was referred to in some of the old writings. And I was really surprised, because when I hear that boron going, I think, that's the way it's been for centuries. And then I find out, well, it's sort of a modern instrument.
Yeah, well, I mean, the drum has been, one of the oldest instruments, the easiest to make historically. But the Irish drum used to be used for a completely different thing. I can't exactly remember, but it used to be buried once a year, and then they'd dig it up and they'd do it. They'd use it for some ceremony. I meant to look it up, get the details of it, but I can't.
I thought they were like old sifters or something.
Something similar to that.
I don't know what the custom would have been, but that's one more thing to look up.
Right.
Maybe somebody will be listening to this show and call it in, and we'll understand more about the mystery of the boron.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, I wondered. Some of the old Irish, the American music on the frontier that's considered early Western music, really has its roots in Irish tunes, and folks would come over here and just put new words to an old tune. So an old tune in Ireland would mean one thing, and the tune would have a completely separate set of words here in America. Like, did you know that Spalpeen Fanna, an old Irish song, actually became The Girl I Left Behind Me here in the States, according to most of what I read.
Right, yeah. It's a very similar melody.
And they have a totally different meaning with the words. One's a nice, happy song here in America, but in Ireland it was more of a depressed and a mournful song, even though it sounds really fun.
Yeah.
If you listen to it without knowing the words. We're going to have to cover that in a future show, I bet. Are there you got any songs? You know, we usually try to get people to break loose with a song at least once while they're here. I wonder, is there anything you might feel like singing out today?
Yeah, well, I was thinking when I was in Cork City, I was in a bar called the Spalpeen Fanna, and the owner knew a guy that I played with in Massachusetts, so he said, stop by here. You're in for a good time if you stop by and tell him you know me. So sure enough, I went in, and I went in around 4, and I don't think I left until closing time.
Yeah, so, that's right. It worked.
He brought down the guitar, and we started sharing songs and things like that, and that was a great experience. And I'm just thinking, one of the songs that I sang there, I sang a lot of American songs because when I was over there, an American, why don't you play some blues or something like that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, give us some good American music.
Yeah. But one of the Irish songs that I sang was a song I learned off Seamus Ennis called, from a Seamus Ennis recording, "The Banks of the Roses." So let me try that one.
Great.
By the banks of the roses, me love and I sat down, and I took out me violin for to play me love a tune. In the middle of the tune she cried and she said, "Oh Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?" Well, when I was a young man, I heard me father say that he'd rather see me dead and buried in the clay than for to see me with any runaway by the lovely sweet banks of the roses. Well, I am no runaway, and soon I let them know that I can take a bottle or can leave it alone. And the man who doesn't like me can leave his daughter at home, and young Johnny will go roving with another. And if ever I get married, it'll be in the month of May, when the meadows they are green, the grasses are gay, and me true love can sit and sport and play by the lovely sweet banks of the roses. By the banks of the roses, me love and I sat down, and I took out me violin for to play me love a tune. In the middle of the tune we cried and we said, "Oh Johnny, lovely Johnny, would you leave me?"
Hey, nice one.
Thanks.
We're going to have to run you guys down and hear you play, or get you to sneak in after the session. I don't know how we do that. You've traveled all over the world here. Do you notice, what differences do you notice when you mingle with the Irish community, if you can think of any? Oh, like say between Boston or your home, Holyoke, was it?
Holyoke. Yeah.
Holyoke,
yeah.
Or Kansas City or Limerick. You walk into a pub. What tells you it's Irish, and what are some of the differences different areas might give to you?
Well, they're all basically playing the same tune. They might have a little different musical accent, you might say, based on what kind of music because a lot of people here have been playing other musics, and then they come and they learn Irish music. So their influences, sometimes you can hear that, but for the most part, every community has been pretty welcoming. Come in and sit down and play a tune, and
right.
Yeah, so it's a great way to share music.
Do some people rely more on the fiddle or more on the guitar, or do you see any differences like that?
I suppose there's not as much accordion here as there would have over there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, actually in Ireland, there's a lot of female banjo players, which I was surprised to see, because in Boston I was, one of a very small handful of banjo players, and they're all male. So
yeah. That'd be hey, you know, that's something you could start up, a little group of banjo players and get the girls to come in, and we'd have a special group here and tell them we're following tradition.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I suppose you could do that.
I know. What's your main instrument now that you like to play? The pipes or no?
Well, it depends what I'm doing. If I'm singing, I like to play, you know, guitar or mandolin. But I do love the sound of the pipes, and I've been working on that. But, you know, as far as going to session, I usually just bring the banjo because it's easy. So.
Now, if you got a bunch of people out there that hear this music in the sessions, or they might hear your band playing and they think, boy, I'm going to get into that, what instrument would you suggest they could get into the easiest, and what might be the hardest to learn so they know how much they're biting off?
Well, that all depends on if you have any previous musical, you know, practice with an instrument. You know, a lot of instruments transfer skills. So if you know, you're playing a guitar, you could easily pick up a banjo or a mandolin. Or if you're playing, you know, any kind of woodwind instrument, the flute or the whistle. Whistle would be the first choice. You know, that's pretty
be the
easy.
Easiest.
Yeah.
After the boron.
Yeah, after the boron. Yeah.
Boron, then the whistle. What about somebody hears that fiddle music and they say, boy, I'd like to play that. I know a little bit about music, but I've never played. How long would that take? It would take 5 years before you could play it good?
Well, you know, I haven't really. I tried to pick up the fiddle, but the noise of practicing, I just couldn't. You know, you just really have to. If you love an instrument, you know, it's all up to you. It could take as little as, you know,
That's right.
a year or more than that, depending on how much time you put into it.
I tried to do that with my voice. I start to singing, and the sound of my singing was so hard to put up with. I thought I better switch back to something else.
Yeah, well, you were sounding good earlier today when you were singing.
Hey, I'm trying. Eventually, I might be able to sing a song. That'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what else you know here? We're coming to the end of it, and I sure appreciate you coming back here. We had a recording session once, and something got into the lines there, some gremlins or some banshees, and boy, the sound just went out on us. So we're here trying to make it up today, and I appreciate all your patience in coming back. And any other final words, things you might like to share with the audience?
No, not really. Just keep listening to your program.
Hey, that's right. We're going all the time. Well, thanks a lot for being on the second season of the Irish Song and Recitation Festival. I think that's the channel we'll put it on. And I thought I might put it on the Irish in Missouri or Irish in America channel, but we talk about so much music, I think it might belong on the music channel. We'll see.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Okay, thanks a lot for coming. That's a wrapper for today, folks. I'm Mick the Bridge at the Irish Roots Cafe. You can contact me at mike@irishroots.com or send your submission or your notes to Box 7575, Kansas City, Missouri 64116. And you can always reach me on the web at www.irishroots.com. Call up and leave me your message or your entry on my phone recording machine at 816-256-3360. Just do it today. And oh yes, any donation to keep this show going is appreciated. And remember, keep the best of your Irish heritage alive today.